This story I tell in my first book, and it's available as a free PDF on my website. Okay, Am I
Awesome.
Bipolar or Waking Up is the PDF. So what happened to me is I was dealing with about 7 years of on again, off again depression, but it was for me it was always around my career. Just struggling with my career. But finally, someone convinced me to go take this course, the Landmark Forum, Landmark Education. And at the time, I didn't know anything about it. It was rooted in something from the 70s called S training. And it's just a very confrontational weekend where they really kind of get in your face about who you are and what you're about and how you're sabotaging your life and really messing with you psychologically. But because there's 50 people in the room together, energetically, it's a really strong thing too. Like I was going to the bathroom and pardon my French, farting. Like I have never passed gas like this in my entire life. Every break we had, I had to go into the bathroom and process internally what the hell was going on. Like
Farting for everyone.
it was really uncomfortable, and I've never had an experience like that since. Okay.
Interesting. So funny.
Yeah, but and they controlled things like they told you had to promise you will not go to the bathroom while we're in session. Like you won't just get up and walk out the door. You needed to wait for breaks. And if you couldn't agree to that, you had to leave the course. Like they wanted everybody on the same page. So they created almost like a cult-like environment where you needed to buy in or you're out the door. Second day of that course, though, they asked us to do a meditation on our fear. And I didn't think I felt any fear. I was 30 years old at the time. Didn't think I felt any fear. And then in the middle of this meditation, I saw a depth gauge from my scuba diving equipment from Vancouver 2 months earlier. And I had a scuba diving accident. I lost my weight belt about 90 feet below sea level. Okay. And there was a moment there where I'm looking at my depth gauge and I'm just wondering if I'm going to die before I hit the surface, because I lost my weight belt. I'm shooting up to the surface from 90 feet below. I'm just watching this thing and I'm exhaling, wondering if I'm going to make it to the top. And I couldn't allow myself to feel any sense of panic or fear in that moment, because if you did and you held your breath, that could create an air embolism and you could die. So I was just very relaxed. I just stayed relaxed until I hit the surface. But then on that fear meditation, I just had this huge punch in my chest and just started bawling. And then all the fear came up and I could feel everything and I was shaking. And they were encouraging us to go into deeper fear imagery. I imagined myself sort of being kidnapped and this kind of thing. Once that was over, my senses had completely shifted. And I felt like there was a sense of oneness, connection to everything, lighter. I felt like I knew things about life that I didn't know before. Like before, I always felt like I was missing something. All of a sudden, it was okay. And then my senses sharpened. So I could see detail in curtains I couldn't see before, smelling things I couldn't smell before. It was just everything was more vivid. And then I got really emotional. And this state carried on for about 5 days, and it takes about 80 pages of my book. And then on the fifth day, I was still on the course, and I came to this conclusion that I must have died in that scuba diving accident, because I felt so completely different. That this is what heaven feels. Yeah, I was in the course thinking, this is what it feels like when you die. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, that's what happened. I'm dead.
Wow.
And I just thought everybody in the room were actors that were just there to play a role to help me move along in my life and to move along to the next level. And I eventually went into this other room, this other ballroom, because it was all taking place at a ballroom for this final night. And I just thought I was going there to meet God. And part of it was taking off all my clothes. And also I peed on the carpet there. It was all like a test. I had to let go of everything. So I let go of my bladder too.
Wow.
And eventually the police showed up and I wouldn't put my clothes back on because I thought this was part of the test. And they grabbed me and put me in an ambulance and took me to the hospital. And I still thought I was going to nirvana or heaven or something. I was trying to get to that other dimension. I was sure I was dead. But then a couple of days after being in the hospital, I started to realize nothing was changing, and my delusion actually started to break down just by the fact that I was still in the hospital and people weren't particularly nice to me.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, this is, I don't know what's going on. My family was very supportive while I was in the hospital. They were devastated, but they were very supportive. When I got home, I still had this feeling like I'm having a spiritual experience. I don't know what a mental disorder is. I don't know what bipolar disorder is or schizophrenia, but I had a spiritual experience. And part of it is the spiritual delusion, the common one, feeling like you're dead, dying, or being reborn. That's one. Feeling like you're being tested by God is another very common one. And then another common one for people is feeling like they're on a special mission here to save the world. But I didn't have that one because I was dead, right? Like I was moving on. So all this happened in 1996. I want to make that clear to people. And after I had a few months to integrate, and I had a family friend who was very understanding and would listen, was a great listener. She was from India, so she had more of an open mind than some of the others. And once I had that time, I went back to work in advertising, which is what I used to do. And my life got a lot better. My salary tripled, in 3 years. People said they really appreciated me on their business. They felt like I really cared, these kind of things. Even while at that point, I wanted to get out of the business. I needed to find some sort of spiritual mission. And after being in advertising for a year, I met a Brazilian woman on a trip to Peru. I had a dream I was being called to Peru, and I just kind of went on a tour. There's a lot of details there, but I met her on a tour, and eventually we got married and we moved to Brazil. Okay. And so then I became an English teacher here, and my life got much better. My years as an English teacher were probably the best years of my life. And that took me sort of between 2000, when I got married, to 2007. And but up that whole time, I wasn't really involved in this work. I thought that spiritual emergency and mental disorder were two completely different things in that period.
Right. Right. Okay. So going into this, what was your two questions? What was your background and experience in kind of like psychosis, bipolar? Like, were you familiar with even that language? And then also, did you have how
Oh,
about
okay.
the language of spirituality? Were you spiritual before? Did you grow up with any sort
Yeah.
of like Christian background, anything like that?